Hi everyone, welcome back to the Mandarin Blueprint Podcast, episode 150 today. I'd like to start off with one of my favorite kinds of emails, which is one of the emails after or comments rather, after the foundation course, phase 5, or intermediate or soon to be advanced course. Like after one of those big milestones, people send a message, and usually at this point, when they do send these messages, they are sort of having a breakthrough of some kind, or they're looking over at their progress, and they're just in that moment of feeling very positive, and you really get that from these sorts of messages. So it's Tammy Liu, who's been with us for a little while now, and this is at the end of the foundation course of phase 5, where it's you finished the phase 5 would be level 36, so that means that you're reading stories, you've built the foundation upon which to develop further skill, and you're ready to start really using tutors, and really the snowball's just starting to really get moving. So let's look at what Tammy has to say. She says, "I'm super excited to reach this milestone in my Mandarin learning journey. It's been amazing to see the progress from the beginning, where I could barely recognize any words and barely read sentences, to now where I can read entire stories. It really hit me that this was working when I was able to read my family's Weixin messages without a dictionary, and also reply without a dictionary. I've been dreaming of this moment for years, and now I'm here, and more excited than ever to continue on to the intermediate course. I'm so glad that MB was able to keep me excited to learn, as I think that's a big missing factor in so many other courses, though I also really paced myself by taking 1 year and 1 month to get here. That's a good pace. That's a solid pace. The important thing is consistency. Do you do something every day? So it doesn't matter how long it takes you, as long as you're having fun and you do something every day. That's the 2 things that we require. Mandarin Blueprint is so good that I wish that I had something similar for other languages I want to learn. Opportunity for expansion, maybe? Thank you, Luke and Phil, for the course, for keeping us motivated, for really helping change so many people's experiences with language learning and Mandarin." Well, thank you, Tammy, for that just great message. And congratulations on your progress. Well done. That's all from your own hard work building that foundation over this last year or so. So what? Some people it takes, there are some people that have finished the foundation course in less than a month, and there are some people that have been on it for 2 years and are still working their way through it at their own pace. And that's fine. Either way is fine. It is not a race. It's about enjoying the journey. So take as long as you like. Well, one thing that does tend to happen is people do tend to, once they get into it, they tend to get kind of addicted, and they just keep going, keep getting faster and faster with it, putting more and more time into it, especially towards the end. So let us know any more developments you have. I always like to hear about this, because Tammy has a Chinese family that she can now start connecting with more on a deeper level, which is so cool. Whether you have a Chinese spouse or parents, brothers, sisters, whatever it is, it really makes a huge difference. So, especially connecting with that older generation, who are always kind of a little bit, they might not say it, but they're always kind of a little bit disappointed when they come to a Western country to settle down. I'm sure they enjoy certain aspects of that lifestyle, but they when their children aren't as, let's just say, they don't have a deep knowledge of the language, as deep a knowledge as they do, or sort of lose connection to that culture. It is disappointing, So not to say that they're disappointed in you. It's just disappointing that fact. It's just I want sort of the best of both worlds. I want to be here and enjoy what I enjoy about this country, but also I want to sort of maintain my culture and my heritage through my children. I know this obviously because I know quite a few people, Chinese families that have settled down in foreign countries. So what you're doing here, Tammy, is just fantastic. I'm sure you already realize that. Your parents are just going to be so happy about this. Already are, probably. Yeah, so that's one thing. Also, one thing you said at the end here, something other languages I want to learn. Yeah, we've been asked this many times. People are like, you should do this for English, you should do this for, all sorts of different languages. I'm definitely open to it. Maybe starting off with something close to Chinese, at least in the written format, such as Japanese. Maybe sort of transitioning there, because it would translate much better and easier. What with the character learning method and things like that, and that would also give us a sort of an opportunity to cover traditional characters at the same time, because Japanese uses a lot of traditional characters, so that could be a good stepping stone towards that. 2 birds with 1 stone, and who knows, maybe down the line we've got Spanish blueprint, who knows. But right now we're just going to stick with Chinese. It's a big enough project as it is. Solve the Chinese problem and then maybe we'll move on to other languages later. But well done, Tammy. Again, please do stay in touch. Keep us updated. Next is George Johnstone by email. It says, hi, Luke and Phil. Thanks for your email. Maybe I'll do a more complete review when I finish phase 2. But here are a few observations for now. Before starting out with the hands and movement method, I was aware of the memory techniques used, so I didn't doubt that they could work. But I did have doubts about whether they were right methods for me. Now I'm convinced. Yeah, that's really common. People, it's kind of tough. Some people get scared away by the idea of creating memory palaces in their mind and say, oh, I don't have a good imagination, I can't do that. I'm sure we've lost a lot of potential customers just from the idea of that, because it's just such a new way of learning something for a lot of people. But what most people don't realize is it's a skill that anyone could learn, even people with certain issues with visualization. There's something called aphantasia, where you cannot imagine or find it difficult to imagine things visually. Even if you can't do that, you can still visualize just using other senses. But even people without that problem, they just lack confidence, and it's like, okay, maybe I'll go with something else. So we're always thinking of new ways to sort of ease people into it. If anyone has any ideas, let me know. So George continues, I'm now partway through phase 2. I think that at the very beginning of characters course, that's phase 1, I was a little disappointed because I had mistakenly thought that simply creating the movie would magically fix it in my head. I now realize that it's a combination of the initial creative process followed by the flashcard reviews that fully implants the movie. Yes, it's like you learn the movie, you learn the character, or the word, or whatever it is that you're learning, whichever stage you're at, and you immediately go and review it when your session is over. That's absolutely key. Because no matter how good your memory is of something, you're eventually going to forget it for most things. So yeah, especially when you just learned it as well. Even if you learned it in a really cool way with all these different visual mnemonics, it's very quickly sort of leaving your brain until you got to get in there early and do the first couple of reviews. It might be useful to video a comparison of 2 people learning the same set of characters, one by traditional rote learning, the other using the movie method, so to use as promotional material to help overcome potential initial resistance to your weird but wonderful method. Well, there you go. There's a good suggestion right there. I don't often read these messages before, so yeah, that's actually very cool. It could be good to do that. I've already kind of done that experiment hundreds of times, but I can actually film that would be a good idea, I think. although I'm still going through characters I mostly know. Obviously, George has learned Chinese before. There are many gaps in my knowledge, quote unquote, especially tones and some character components. I really appreciate how with the movie method, frequently just one prompt, it might be a prop, a set, or an actor, is enough to bring the whole movie to mind, and thus all the information relating to that character, the initial, the final, the tone, the meaning, the components, etc. I'm assuming that later on, when I really do know a character, the movie becomes less important as recall becomes more automatic and effortless. But the movies will always be there as a backup. This is exactly right. Yes, not only yes, you're right, because of the way these visual mnemonics are created, they create like a web, a network of memories, not just one sort of section in your brain. It's like a network connecting to all your senses and past memories and things like that. So if you forget, if one part of the network goes dead, which does happen sometimes, you forget the prop, you forget the certain aspect of the scene, remembering any of the other parts sort of brings everything else back to life again, reinvigorates it. Yes, and eventually something that will naturally happen is that almost all your scenes will be forgotten. All of them, almost. There'll be always a handful that will just stay with you forever, no matter what, because of various reasons. But yeah, and that's kind of the goal. We don't want to have to rely on the character. The scene. The character just becomes a part of you, and you see that. And, that's how you write it. Oh, you write it. You say, that's what that means. Without having to go into your auntie's bathroom and reimagine a scene. These are just stepping stones, bridges to your long-term memory. So yes, you're absolutely right. They'll be, but again, they will be there as a backup when you do forget that character. You can go back to it. He said, my imagination has come to life, and my movie making is certainly getting quicker. Where my early movies often showed the keyword in an utterance of the actor, I'm increasingly able to express the keyword in visual form or through action, which is more memorable. So my movies seem to work, although I'm not going to be winning any Oscars. That's fine. Some of my movies might be considered for Monty Python sketches, and there's also quite a few X-rated ones as well. That's fine as well, a bit of violence, etc. That's completely normal, and they don't need to be. In fact, I would not recommend trying to make them Oscar worthy because it's just a waste of time and energy. You could learn 10 characters in the space of 10 Monty Python characters, let's say, in the space of one Oscar-worthy one. So much better doing, and they're both just as effective. So I've been through the video lessons for the pronunciation course twice, and now I'm just continuing with the Anki reviews for that, as well as the 2 additional decks for tone pairs and minimal pairs. I'm looking forward to slightly more meaningful practice working with full sentences. Yeah, that's definitely worth looking forward to. You get full sentences, and you also get eventually paragraphs and unlock full stories. Not, of course, you don't need flashcards for those, but it's all part of the same content. I know that you recommend leaving writing for later and limit writing practice to handwriting the character with each movie review in Anki. I find that is enough for reinforcing stroke order, and often I just write on the table with my finger for that. But I find that I need additional practice to really establish the muscle memory and a feel for the relative position and proportions of the components in the written characters, which is what is going to lead to nice handwriting. So I make myself a practice writing sheet at the end of each level and use that for daily practice until I move on to the next level. I'm trying to do as much foundation building for writing as I'm doing with pronunciation work as a foundation for spoken output later. I know this is perhaps not for everyone, but I enjoy, in quotes, it, especially when my characters begin to look halfway decent. It is very satisfying, writing characters by hand. I never used the square paper, but that's a very good idea. Not using it, if you're going to write characters, you should use the square paper, like native Chinese people would do. With writing, I think it's partly the challenge that appeals to me. Nobody really writes by hand that much anymore. Yes, that's true. And I know my English handwriting has deteriorated. To think I used to write to handwrite my university essays back then. Yeah, it's just unthinkable, isn't it, at the moment? I think I mentioned in one of my community comments that when I started Mandarin Blueprint, I dropped nearly all of my other study activities to focus on MB. I'm only continuing my extensive listening and reading. There were a lot of activities and it was becoming a bit of a chore to remember and manage all of them. As a result, for now, MB is more like a holiday. I'm certainly studying in a much more relaxed way than I was before, and that can only be good. I think that's about it for the moment. Feel free to quote any of this you want. And as I said, I'll hopefully write a more detailed Google review at the end of phase 2, or perhaps a little way into phase 3. Thanks for putting this course together, and all the best. Bao zhong, which means take care. So thank you very much there, George. It sounds like your instincts are completely on point about this course and about learning Chinese and generally all aspects of this process. You seem to have, I don't want to correct you on anything. It looks like you've got everything right, in my opinion. And writing by hand, doing things your own way. I think that's a good idea to practice that handwriting. I did it a lot, and I did it to the point where my characters did look pretty good, and that's not because you have to. It's just because I found it really satisfying. It is very satisfying to write characters well. So yes, as long as you're enjoying it and it's working, that's the way to go. So yeah, please, again, just like with Tammy, please keep us updated on any breakthroughs, and please take your time with that review. I think the longer you take with the review, the more of the course you do before giving your review, the better. It don't take too long. You can always give several edits and updates. A lot of people like to do that, actually. Sort of like finish the foundation or finish phase 2, 3, give a review, and then after the foundation, sort of add a paragraph, update it, edit it, and then go back with the advanced course, intermediate course, etc. Keep sort of adding to that review. So that's a really cool one to do. Next is Lauren Gathman, and she just I thought I'd put this in because it's a question I think a lot of people have looking at our course from the outside. And Lauren says, is this method useful if you're already at a lower intermediate level and can read graded readers? So essentially, you've already got quite a foundation in the language. Is this, Mandarin Blueprint is clearly designed to get you from 0 to, upper intermediate and soon to be very advanced once we expand the course hopefully later on this year. So the answer is yes, in short. But if you're an intermediate learner, it's so varied depending on what you've been using up to this point, whether you're self-study, university, what apps, websites you've been using, what process you've taken. Did you focus on pronunciation? A lot of people miss that. Did you learn any characters? A lot of people don't do that. So a lot of people consider themselves intermediate, but they're not really because they can't read. Lauren looks like she can read, so that's fantastic. She's got a good foundation. She's sort of gone about it the right way by learning to read the right way, in our opinion. And she says, So if you already have a foundation of, I'm guessing, a few hundred characters, coming into Mandarin Blueprint at first might seem a bit slow because you're learning like the number 1 in Chinese, just a horizontal line, number 10, you're learning all these basic characters. But what we always suggest for intermediate learners is you work your way through the course until you've learned the key techniques involved in the system. So once you've mastered the hands and movement method, our visual mnemonics memory palace technique for learning Chinese characters, then you move on to, and then you can just start skipping any characters you like that you know for sure. You can write them, you can recognize them, you know the pronunciation, skip that character. Okay, so same goes for learning words. Once you've got the hang of the mnemonic technique for creating mnemonics, which we'll demonstrate in this podcast and every podcast, and you'll find that if you do it this way, if you just, once you've mastered the techniques, skip over the characters and words you'll very quickly Not only will you, because our order that we present the characters and words is very unique. It's based on real frequencies. There's a lot of words and characters that will come up early, which you maybe don't know. But once you've, but very quickly, if you do it this way, you'll get to the point where you'll get a few hundred characters and words in very quickly. So so there's an initial process that's a bit of a learning curve and might feel a bit slow, but it's way worth it in the end, because our course will eventually get you to 3,000 characters, all the words that comes with that, HSK, the new HSK 9 pass. But it's just that initial part that's a bit slow. But overall, in the long term, absolutely. If you're in this for the long haul and you want to learn Chinese the real way, then yes, go for it. If you're an intermediate learner, even if you know 1,000 characters or whatever, still go for it. Highly recommended. There's also a bunch of long-form content as well. It's not just about learning characters. That's the thing, I guess, that we're becoming most known for. But we're actually more and more becoming something more like Chairman's Bow. We don't have anywhere near as much articles right now, but that's sort of our next phase. Once we've built out the course, the skeleton of the course, I like to call it, just building out the character order and the words, which we're still doing at the point of recording. Then we're going to start adding more and more reading and listening content to that skeleton, I guess you call it, the flesh of the skeleton. So lots more to come. There's already a lot there. Next is Lynn Ford. This is another one of my favorite. I just love these kind of, wow, I can do this now sort of messages. So Lynn is at the point where she's looking at sentences. So here's a bit of feedback from her. She says, so we have been getting these stories, sentence by sentence, and I just unlocked the sentence. 男人又说, so the boy said, 其实这3颗种子是死的. Actually, these 3 seeds are dead. They're just dead seeds. 它们开不出花. They can't grow any flowers. 大儿子和二儿子, so the oldest son and the second son, 为了公司选择换了种子来骗我. So this, you kind of have to know the story really. It's kind of by context, but basically, they cheated me. The first son and the second son cheated me. They switched the seeds to cheat me. 但是小儿子选择了诚实. So the third son chose to be honest. 所以他没有花. So he didn't have any flowers. So it's a story that you can unlock by actually going through. I'm not going to explain the story right here. It's just an old Chinese story. It's quite cool. It's all about honesty. You can probably guess what it's about by that little hint there. So Lynn just says, mind blown. I just yelled out loud, oh my God, the seeds were dead the whole time. I didn't see that coming. A total drama. So much tea to unlock this morning. Also, super clever of the father, lol. These stories are fun to unlock this way. Yeah, that's interesting. That's the first comment, because the key to the Mandarin Blueprint Method is that you never learn anything that you're not ready for. Or, you never see anything. You're not asked or required to learn anything that you don't have a full foundation in order to learn. So, for example, you never learn a character until you've learned all the components for that character. You never learn a word until you've learned both or all the words for that particular word. You never see a sentence until you learn almost all. We're eventually going to get to all, but no more than one that you don't know, one character that you don't know in that sentence. So you're ready to read it and understand the message. And the same goes for stories. So you never see a story until you've seen all the paragraphs. You never see a paragraph until you've seen all the sentences and you can understand them. So it's kind of this process, and you don't actually get to see the full stories until way into the course. So phase 4, 5, you start unlocking this longer form content. So before you get there, like phase 3, phase 4, you're looking at individual sentences of full stories that you'll unlock later. So what Lynn is saying, like sort of getting fed the story, and it's not even in order actually. It's in order of when you're ready to see the sentence, not in order of the actual story itself. So you're kind of getting these little snippets of a story for many levels, and then finally you unlock the whole thing later. So Lynn is just saying she likes that feeling of like getting little parts of a paragraph of a story and sort of piecing it together as she goes. So, and that's the first time I've seen a comment about that. So that's really interesting and fun to see as well. I'm glad that you enjoy that process, Lynn. That's really cool. Thanks. Next is John Nomura, who's commenting on a movie lesson here, and he's actually talking to Keith, who's if you've been following our podcast, he's been quite prevalent, and we've also I've released on YouTube a interview with him. Unfortunately, because of my own it's just my internet really. We lost the last 5 minutes of the interview, but it's still a fantastic interview with lots of great information. And Keith is basically gone from very beginner, not 0 level, but less than HSK 1, like couldn't pass the HSK 1 for sure, to being able to pass the HSK 3 in 9 weeks, which is highly impressive. And that's all pretty much through our course. So Keith was learning 100 characters a day. In fact, me and Phil both did that, but we couldn't do that for very long. We did that for like a few days towards the very end of our process. I think Keith has done something similar. And it's definitely possible, but it's quite an achievement. Let's see how John feels about it and how Keith responds. So John says, did I read that right? You can learn 100 characters per day. So how much time per character? Just curious. I had another Mandarin Blueprint student say something similar. I just can't fathom that. So then Keith responds, in short, yes. However, let me put it another way that makes it seem ridiculously easy whilst giving a more realistic idea of the actual level of proficiency in a day. Bearing in mind that each individual must adapt to the various aspects of challenge in these processes in accordance with favouring, in my opinion, their strengths, at least at first. Here below is my own fundamental process apart from how I engage the innumerable in-between quote-unquote subtleties of making associations. Step 1. Beginning with a new level, simply write each character down once or 2 to 3 times to get it right if needed. Also, write the pinyin and the English next to it for easy reference later. That's 50 characters per level, give or take a few. It's important to do this for just the selections of a single level, since they have been arranged by Luke and Phil to be in optimal order and similarity for learning. While writing them down, this is the second point here, some associations will inevitably occur to you without effort, although nothing really comprehensive. That's fine. Maybe the beginning of the Hansa scene will tease out, but no need to focus on it yet. This takes less than an hour, easy. Step 2, set that single page of notes aside. It should easily fit onto the side of one sheet of paper. I used college ruled paper and had 2 columns of characters, pinyin, English. Write small, use a very fine pen. Step 3, take a break. Step 4, review that sheet of notes, taking more time to mentally consider the Hansa scene. Most important is to fix upon the actor and setting. After that, use whatever works best for you, but try to be brief and give each scene only bare bones consideration, 30 to 45 seconds, and move to the next. I think limiting your time here is a really good idea that Keith is doing. Limit your time. And even if you don't quite make it, just move on. I think that's very interesting. So this takes about 30 to 45 minutes to do that part. And then step 5, take another break. Unsuspend those cards on Anki and review them together as one session without interference from other cards, vocabulary, sentence, etc. We have different types of cards in the course. If you haven't done your review of other cards for the day yet, finish that before starting the new level. As you go through this new level of characters on Anki, some of your brief scenes will reveal themselves to have already been effective and some not. Regardless, you will get to see each card twice. and each character and pinyin and English 4 times total, as there are Hansa pinyin English cards as well as pinyin English to Hansa cards. There's production and comprehension, 2 types of cards on the same note, piece of information. You always have the option to select again on your Anki if you need to continue recycling a card before getting it correct or close enough by your judgment. This takes another 30 minutes or so. Step 6, congratulations, you have reviewed each character at least 6 times by now and have written it down at least once. Now knowing full well in your mind that you have an initial grasp of every aspect of the character. Repeated reviews will continue to reveal things to your attention, how to tweak your associations. Total time with breaks, 2 hours to 2.5 hours. Yes, it makes for a longer study day to do this twice, of course, about 5 hours, but it's not too mentally draining and haven't broken the steps down a bit. You can easily imagine doing 3 levels a day this way, or 4. The final observation here is, and how effective would it be in tomorrow's review? If you take your time with your flashcard reviews the next day, you should find your attention at least 85 to 95%. If you try to rush your Anki reviews, it will of course lower your apparent retention. So first, just before I forget, there's 2 key points that Keith has noted here. First of all, whilst learning, don't spend too much time on one piece of information. Just relax and spend a limited amount of time learning each new character. And you can also apply this technique to words, I assume. Spend 30 seconds, 45 seconds, maybe a minute maximum. Once you've done that, whatever you come up with, doesn't matter. Just move on to the next thing. And you can always come back later. Just come up with the best thing you can. You've got to come up with something, right? Some sort of movie scene. And then move on. I think it's an important thing to do, rather than try and make the scene perfect in that moment, which a lot of people do. I even did the same thing whilst learning this at first. But as I got good at it and I started to master it, I became more blasé with it, actually. And Keith has done the same. So that's one key point. Do not spend, in the initial learning process, do not spend too much time and energy obsessing over all the details. Let the flashcards do the work for you. And that's the second point. Once you actually go to review the first, second time, let your flashcards tell you where your scenes need improvement, because you won't be able to answer that part of the question, right? So you're like, okay, well, I remembered what the character means, but I can't remember the positions of the props. I remember everything else. I remember the actor, the scene, the props, everything. But I can't remember whether this was on the left or was it on the right. Okay, do you know what you need to do? Spend 10 seconds, go into your movie scene and make that position of the several props clearer, more obvious. It takes 10 seconds. And then hit wrong. And then that will come up again in a few minutes' time. And then when it comes up again, do you remember where the things are? Great. And that's how you do your first reviews of the characters you just learned. So I think that's 2 very important points to take in from Keith's report here so far that definitely worked for Phil and I. So don't spend too much time initially on creating the scene. Just make it simple. Keep it simple. That's something we always say. Don't spend too much time. And then with the first or second reviews, those are the vital reviews. And immediately review, that's also key. Immediately do your first review of the characters once your session is over. Fix any major issues, and then wait till tomorrow and fix further issues. If you do that early, nip it in the bud, you won't have long-term issues with your characters. And take your time with the reviews. Make sure you're really reviewing. You're not just sort of perfunctorily going through and clicking through. I sort of remember that. Make sure that you actually do the review required. So it asks you to write the character. Can you write it? Really try. Delve back into your scene. And correct any issues. Next, he says, personally, my subsequent reviews averaged around 13 seconds per card and 92% retention. At which point I recommend you consider how to reduce the time per card while increasing the accuracy. Best example of this is with the minimal pairs deck with a simple phoneme like sa versus da. I was fairly good at these cards from the get-go, yet with practice I was able to reduce my time to below 2 seconds per card with 99% accuracy. At about that threshold of pace and accuracy, my brain started to wire for automaticity. I've never heard that word. And now I have an almost completely automatic and accurate pinyin in a mental subtitle, pacing along with everything I listen to. My goal now is to try and discover similar automaticity threshold levels for both the forward and reverse processes of the two types of vocab cards. Good luck. So thanks, Keith, for taking the time to write that message to answer John. And it's also insightful for us as well, because there's a lot of things, because Keith is he's an academic, obviously, and he has specialized in test preparation, like how to pass exams. Basically, that's kind of one of his levels of expertise. So he's obviously adept at figuring out hacks to become more efficient, to making the learning and regurgitation process, recall process more efficient and effective. And he's doing a lot of things that other people, including myself, have done, but he's able to articulate and experiment with these different things. So that's a unique thing to Keith, I think, and I'd really appreciate Keith getting in touch and giving us any more little hacks or tips, because this is great. I think I might use some of this for a video earlier on in the course for people. So well done, Keith. Thanks a lot. And next is bubu on level 12. Phase 2 complete. I've been enthusiastically doing my flashcard reviews on a daily basis with 200 words with ease. Is this a normal figure for most? I find that I could do much more, but I'm not sure or familiar with how Anki works best. I do have the capacity to do more. Please advise how I can revise everything. Not all the cards appear for review though. I tend to hit more of the blue and the green, which basically means easy and good. So that makes the next review take longer to come up. I also find that I tend to skip the movie review when I can instantly recognize a word or character. Is this normal? Or do I go through the movie in my head? So I want to put this in as well, because again, a lot of people would, I think, have these questions and have had these questions before. And the simple answer is for the first question, which is, am I doing enough reviews? It's like, well, if you're asking that question, probably not, because you could do more. You want to do more. You're probably bored by your level that you're doing. 200 is quite a lot, but you said with ease. So if you're doing 200 with ease, you should definitely increase that. If you have the time and the energy and the inclination, do it. Learn more. The key to reviews and how much you take on is what gets you into flow state most often. Flow state is essentially where you're not bored and you're not stressed. You're just in the moment, enjoying. It don't necessarily have to be pleasurable, but it's definitely something where you're not in displeasure. You're in the moment. You're just reviewing it and you're into it. You want to be able to take on enough workload where you can maintain that state as long as possible. So yeah, I would increase them. But if you're feeling like, oh man, you're looking at your flashcards, I've got 500 reviews today. Oh no, then it's time to reduce how many new cards you're taking on each day. Is it a normal figure? I don't know exactly what's a normal figure, but it sounds about right. Yeah, 100 to 200 sounds about right. But we haven't done like tests on that or anything like that. We're very free. We ask you to follow our guidelines, how to learn, but in terms of how much you learn, we let you go completely at your own pace. We don't make any judgments on that. And the reason why cards aren't appearing is because they're easy for you. And if cards are easy for you, we don't want to see them. That's the whole point, right? We want to get them away from us. We want to focus on the hard ones. That's what makes the spatial repetition software so efficient. And if you can instantly recognize a character or word, that's what you're required to do with that particular card, then skip it. Don't worry about the movie scene. Like I said earlier in this podcast, the scenes are just bridges to your long-term memory. And once you're there, you have that long-term memory, drop the scene. They'll always be there somewhere in the back of your mind. You can access them later if you need to. But you're absolutely doing it 100% right. So well done. Next is Jessie Johnson on level 2 complete. He says, just wanted to drop a note and say how much I'm enjoying the method. Thanks, Jessie. Luke and Phil have really created something special, and I hope you both feel very proud of your work. I'm certainly very appreciative of all the time and care you obviously put into this. Thank you very much. I'm kind of introverted, so I don't comment often, but whenever I come up with something unique, I'll try to share that so that maybe others can benefit, as I have from all the wonderful suggestions in the community. Thank you, everyone. And that's great to hear. I really appreciate you challenging your introverted nature and saying hi, and you're doing the right thing, because that will help other people with similar situations also say hi, and it's a really nice chain reaction that you get, and that's what the benefit, I guess, of having a nice, friendly, warm community, which is what we are developing here, and it's great to see. So thank you, Jessie, and please do comment as often as you can. We always like to hear from everyone. So that's all the emails and comments, just general comments we've had this week. Let's jump into a few living links. These are vocabulary mnemonics, so people would give their suggestions on how to learn words using cool mnemonics. It's not quite as detailed or intense as our memory palace techniques for learning characters. They're much more relaxed. And it just involves coming up with a simple link and definitely coming up with an image to go with it. And that's how you learn compound words made up of more than one character. So let's jump in and you'll see what I mean. So Brennan Pimpinella on Vocab Unlocked for 字, 汉字, just says, hey, finally made it to the 汉字, the word for Chinese character in the 汉字 movie method. So that's what we call it, the 汉字 movie method, which for people that don't know what 汉字 means, maybe isn't the best name, because people are Hanzi movie method, what's a Hanzi? But for people in the know, I think it's a pretty cool name. Sorry, we got criticized on some forum a while back. Some guy was like, I don't like that name. I was like, I can understand people not liking it. But Phil and I are fans. Hanzi movie method. And if anyone, if the consensus is that, that's not a good name, well, Phil came up with it, so it's his fault. And if it's a good name, we came up with it as a team. So Hanzi, whilst we're on this, we might as well come up with a vocab mnemonic as well, because Brennan was just like, yay, I made it, but let's come up with a vocab mnemonic. It's one of those where it's just so straightforward, you don't even need to, which is probably why Brennan didn't bother, because Han means Chinese. Let's say Han means the dominant ethnicity of Chinese people, the Han Chinese. Of course, there are, I think it was 52, is it 52 or 54? It's 50 something different ethnicities within China. And the Han is by far the most common ethnicity you'll find. So Hanzi, the characters, the alphabet of the Chinese people, so it's kind of just obvious. So I would maybe just write down your favorite Chinese character, find a nice calligraphy of that, like a calligraphic image of that, and just put that in your cards. What's your favorite one? What might be a good idea is looking up the character biang, which is a sound that you probably haven't heard. Biang, I believe it's first tone, where it is officially the character, the simplified character with the most strokes. So just look that up. B-I-A-N-G, biang. It's a type of noodle. So that might be a good one to put in. Or just put in, just do a Google search for the Chinese character with the most strokes, and you'll see it. It's pretty intense. I can't write it. So yeah, I think that'll be a good one for you. Try that. Next is Alfred Hong on Vocab Unlocked for May. And there's a few words here, but he's gone with 从来没. So we've got 没什么, 没关系, and 从来没. So 从来没, I was wondering for some time what image I could use here. 从来没 means never have ever in the past. 从来没. I ended up using an image from Men in Black where Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones' characters are wiping someone's memory. That's good. You never saw us. 你从来没看到我们. Yeah, that's actually a very cool one. 没关系. We've actually already done this word, so I won't bother with the other ones there. I did that in my last podcast, I believe. But well done, Alfred. Next is Chris Lewis on Vocab Unlocked for 床, as in bed. 起床, to get up, as in specifically to get up out of bed in the morning after waking up. This sounds like Cheech and Chong, an old TV series from the 80s. Yeah, I've sort of heard of that. I haven't personally seen it. But 起床 is, I believe there's always a reference you can find to getting up out of bed. I think that's something that I would personally just search for, just directly put in 起床 or to get up out of bed. And, or like think of there's got to be some like movie reference. There's an old cornflakes advert. I've really got strongly in my head. It's just about this guy who's a paper boy, and it's just one of those adverts that always stuck in my head where he's in bed. He's like, I love my bed. And the only thing that gets me up in the morning is cornflakes. So that's what I might go for. I might go for that cornflakes advert if I could find it. But I'm sure you'll find a good reference to that. It's such a generic, common idea. Next is Chris Lewis again on Vocab Unlocked for 反应. I actually like this one quite a lot. So 反应means reaction, response. And he says, sounds like fanning. Fanning. When it's really hot outside, the reaction is to the heat is to fan yourself. Yeah, I'm a big fan of that. It's a good way to... that's a good one. That's good enough for me. Might want to connect to the characters as well. The characters, if you look at them, if you know what the characters mean, it's actually very straightforward as well. Delve into that if you want. But I think just coming up with an image relating to some sort of reaction to something, as Chris has got, would be more than enough. Korneel Snauwaert on Vocabulary Unlocked for 能. So we've got 能力 and 可能. And he's got a poem. This is a first for me. I haven't seen this kind of one yet. A poem for 能力. And he says, does Bruce Lee have 能力? And of course the answer is yes. And again, 能力 is... very like the way the characters are arranged, it's very obvious, straightforward. Nung is able and li is power, ability. It's just ability. It's pretty straightforward there. 可能 is also very straightforward where the characters are concerned. They just sort of, it's a natural mnemonic the way they go together. So 可能 means possible. Or possibly. So what could possibly happen in the near future? Search for it. What is possible? What is not possible? So you could maybe have someone walking through a wall. This is not 可能, but you could also, I guess it could be both actually, because technically, according to quantum physics, so I've heard, it's possible to walk through a wall. Just based on probability, it's never going to happen, of course, but it's technically possible if all of the molecules in your body lined up with the molecules in the wall or something. Don't quote me on that, right? I'm not, but it doesn't matter if that's actually true, what I just said, because I've heard of it, so it's a memory of mine. So I could still use that. I could find that Ewan McGregor movie, Men Who Talk with Goats. There's references to going through walls, and he runs through the wall at the end of the movie, or the X-Man character. Something that's just like an example of a connection you could have there. And next is Kim Thomas, Vocab Unlocked for E. And there's a ton of words unlocked here. So we've got 意思, which means meaning, 介意, 同意, 有意思, 没意思, 不好意思, 注意, 做生意, 意外. And I'll have a go. All right, I'll have a go at doing all of these off the top of my head right now. But first, let's go with Kim Thomas's one. So, 有意思 literally has meaning. All right, so that's another one that is just very obvious. So something's interesting. That's what 有意思 means. It has meaning to it. I used Jason Lightfoot, a British YouTuber who calls himself aka Mr. 有意思, among other names. Nice. Okay, that works for me. Well, it actually doesn't work for me because I don't know who that guy is. But I'm saying I approve of your connection. But I would, for 有意思, just generally interesting, I would have a detective with a magnifying glass. Interesting. That's the connection that I immediately come up with for that. 意思 itself, it's made up of meaning and thought. 思 is to think. And to have meaning, I guess we have to, as human beings, prescribe meaning to it by using our thoughts. So, it has to have meaning in the first place, like objectively, right? This is, by the way, I'm not a philosopher. I'm not that smart. So this is just, but the point is, as long as I make the connection for myself, then it works. Even if I'm completely wrong, even if I'm talking absolute nonsense, still works because the connection is there in my mind. And the same goes for you. Don't ever second guess yourself. Like, is this actually true? Doesn't matter. It's the same with your movie scenes. Can Nicole Kidman actually fly? No, but she's going to fly in your scene, and that's going to help you remember the character. It's going to get you to the goal. Okay, so let's go back. Let's go back to this. Is meaning. So meaning has to exist inherently in something, and then we think about it, and that's what creates meaning. Like, that's what sort of creates the meaning for us. It's kind of like, you could say, I think, therefore I am. You could connect it to that, I suppose. I'm reaching a little bit there, but I think that would be enough to go on, or at least maybe I get the picture of the thinking man. Maybe could do a bit meta, and the thinking man is actually considering the mnemonic for this particular word. So next we have 介意. So 介意 means to mind, as in, do you mind if I... 你介意吗? Do you mind? So for this one, we have to look at the characters a little bit. So 介, we've chosen as to introduce. One of the common meanings that we could use for this one is to be situated in between. That's the more accurate meaning of it. As in, like, I'm between these two people, so I'm going to introduce them, 介绍, right? And another common meaning is to take seriously, to mind. So it actually carries that meaning of to mind. But let's go with the idea of introduce, let's say, like between two things, introducing them. To introduce meaning, so it's like this, sitting here actually has no meaning. It doesn't matter, right? But if I mind, if it bothers me for some reason, like, for example, it's actually my seat, I have a ticket for this seat, then I do 介意. I will introduce meaning into this situation, and I will bring up a problem that I have about it, and me and you will maybe have an issue, right? So I think that's a sort of a good, decent enough connection to the two characters there. And then, of course, for the image, just come up with something that you mind, right? Something that bothers you. For some reason, I think of 介意, I think of Mr. Bean. He's always doing really annoying things that make people mind a lot. So I would just basically come up with, well, just any Mr. Bean episode. Just get an image of Mr. Bean doing anything pretty much. He's always going to be annoying someone. Or just the idea of someone looking over, like looking past their newspaper, just that kind of sticks out for me as well. 同意, like to agree, is to have the same meaning with someone else. So yeah, this is where E is interesting. It has like sort of very broad definition, but yeah, we could just stick to meaning for now. So if you have the same meaning, so you can actually get someone agreeing, you get like grammar Nazis and things like that, people saying, oh, excuse me, you should actually, this word doesn't mean this, you should use it in this way. You could actually have the idea of two nerds high-fiving. Because like, we have the same, we agree on the meaning. We agree this word has the same meaning, so we're not going to be grammar Nazis with each other. This is all off the top of my head, right? I'm prepared for this. So it's not, it works for me. All right, so the idea of same meaning. Can you think of any other usages for that particular phrase? 有意思, we've already covered that one with like just something interesting. Detective. 没意思, that kind of is so obvious. It's like there is no meaning, isn't it? It's like the opposite of interesting. 没意思. It's like, that's completely uninteresting. I just immediately thought of the character from Futurama that pops up every now and then. If anyone has watched Futurama, you probably know exactly what I'm going to say. The beige people, the bland, I can't remember what they're called now, but there are these people, this race of aliens that have no emotion. And like, it's just really funny. They're like, their whole world's about to be destroyed, and he's like, tell my wife I said hello. Just so I would just get a picture of that guy's straight face. That'd be great. 不好意思. So this is a very common phrase. Something's awkward. You're not sort of fulfilling your role as a person in China. You're losing face. Or maybe you just you bump into someone. You do something you shouldn't do, and you want to say sorry. We're very good at that in England. We just say sorry for everything. So when you want to say that, sort of a mild sorry, you haven't really bothered anyone too much. You haven't. They don't 介意 too much what you've done. You can say 不好意思. You don't need to say 对不起. 对不起 is for when you're really, really sorry. So 不好意思 is actually a bad meaning. So there's a meaning in the air that's bad between us, and I need to say 不好意思 is like a spell to dispel this meaning, so that we don't have this awkwardness or embarrassment between us. Okay, so yes, something you just say. So you could come up with something that would be good in that situation. 不好意思, what would you say in that situation? You'd say like trying to get past someone. That's a really good one. 不好意思啊, like 过一下, like 不好意思啊, 过一下. Excuse me, sorry, I'm just going to get past. So the idea of two people being stuck, like when you get when like you're trying to pass someone, and you sort of keep going the same way. You do this for ages. You have like awkward smiles. That might be a good image, because that's very emotionally, has a lot of emotional content. 注意means to focus on, like to notice, attention as well. It literally is made up of pour meaning. So when you pour meaning into something, you imagine you're pouring meaning into something with your eyes. That's where your meaning comes from. Right? It's what you focus on with your eyes. So to pour meaning into something is to focus on it. That works for me. And then you could get that scene from The Matrix with the woman in the red dress. Yeah, and then that works for me. That just like popped into my head straight away, where that woman is designed to distract you so that you focus on it, so Neo doesn't see the agent right next to him. that's just anything that comes. I think that's a pretty easy concept to find an image for, isn't it? To focus on something. A watched pot never boils, right? So someone watching a cooking pot, very bored. And you can actually pour water in a cooking pot. Maybe you could come up with something that's like, that could also work. 做生意, so 生意 is business, literally to birth meaning. So when you create a business, you're giving birth to meaning. So to 做生意. That's actually a very interesting phrase in there. Business as 生意, to create meaning. I guess you could think of like, some sort of, when you have an innovation, an idea, it doesn't really mean anything. But when you create a business and you sell that idea, you're birthing that meaning into existence. So to 做生意 is to do that, is to do business. So just come up with a picture of any businessman, that'll be fine. The last one here is 意外. Now this is, I would say, for me personally, this is the hardest one on the list. Because it really, you kind of need to bring in another definition of 意, because outside of meaning, because 意外 means accident, right? Oh, they had an 意外, 发生了意外, right? So something out of an accident, basically. So literally it's made up of the characters, meaning outside of meaning. It doesn't quite work. So you have to sort of look into other meanings for meaning, right? For 意. Another key meaning is of desire. Desire, wish, intention. So if something happens outside of your desire or intention, that's a very good definition of accident. So that would work. And then of course for the actual image, come up with something where something's fallen on someone's head, or just there's a minor accident that's happened, and that will work fine. Next, we've got Jeff Johnstone on Vocab Unlocked for 两个. He says, I was searching for a good mental image to go with this and came across a matched set of dueling pistols. I thought it was very interesting for this word. Yeah, I also, dueling pistols, I watched the Count of Monte Cristo for the first time. It was the one with Jim Caviezel and what's his name? The other British actor. It's really good, really good. And there's a lot of dueling with swords that happens in that. So I that for me, because that's kind of fresh in my mind, I would choose two guys with swords, like a sword fight. But that's just as effective. So I like that. It's something to do with battling between two people. That works really well. Yeah. Any other ideas? Do comment below. Next is Rick, Vocab Unlocked for 成. So we've got 完成, 成长. So 完成 means to complete, 成长 means to grow up, to grow. 变成 means to turn into, to change into, and 成为 means to become, and 成人is adult. 完成, he says, now I can understand the sentence that is recited in every ASIMIL lesson, and which could also be said about each MB grammar building close card. 完成句子, finish the sentence. 完成句子. I think that's actually very good, because you could, for the image for this word, you could just get a picture of your close delete, one of your close delete sentences. Finish this sentence. That works really well. It's kind of meta as well. I like that a lot. 成长, to become, and grow means grow. So obviously a plant, so, or a butterfly, something like that. Or just a kid growing up, it's very simple. 变成, change into, that would actually be better as a butterfly. It's more about specifically change rather than growth. So to change into, or you could come up with animorphs or something like that. 成为, and same kind of thing really, to become, just means to become. And if you look at the characters, it's very simple. It's a 成为, to become. But 成为, for me, it's in terms of usage, it's more like, I want to become a doctor, or I want to, when are you becoming a man, something like that. It's not literally growing up, like growing bigger, changing shape necessarily. 成为 is more like, it's more abstract. So like, oh, I'm going to become something, like a job. So that just go for that. Maybe someone studying. And then 成人 is adult, right? So just, I'll leave that one to your imagination. Whatever adults do specifically. Or maybe a kid dressed as an adult. I'm thinking of, what's that, the movie I watched. I watched it so many times when I was a kid. The Little Rascals. Yeah, not the original, but like the movie that came out in like the 90s. I've watched that so many times. So they dress up as an adult at one point, these two kids on top of each other on their shoulders, and they've got a big coat on. So I would maybe go for that. Just because it's funny. But that's all. There's a lot of vocab today, but no movies. We're actually going to stop doing those for now because, I think we've just done enough of those. And the course is full of them, thanks to you guys. And for now, we're just going to stop doing them. We might bring them back later on if we have popular request for them. But I think we've now done that, enough. But happy to continue with these vocab living links. I think they're awesome. Thank you guys for all your messages as usual this week. It's been great to hear from you, and please do send more. If you're listening to this podcast, I often say this. If you listened all this way, you haven't turned this off, but you haven't also tried our course, you should probably do that. We have a 14-day free trial at the moment. You can access the entire course. So it's like, at the moment, there's like 4,500 lessons, and you're free to explore however much you want. Obviously, you won't be able to get through all that in 14 days, but you can explore it all at your heart's content. Thank you very much, guys. I'll see you in a couple of weeks. Bye-bye.